human beings around him, and he couldn't move because he was afraid of the mouse. So it's not what's happening, you know, and he was really clear about that then, that this little mouse never bit him or anything like that. There was no rational reason for him to be afraid of it, but his brain had coded it as being the most dangerous, disturbing thing he'd ever come across, because it lost him this first magical opportunity at love. And so it's not what happens. It's how the brain codes what happens that's important. And once people understand that, it's enormously empowering.
So people going into looking at change work should really look at how the brain science is processing and how it's advanced in the last few years.
Because it has enormously, and to the point where you could say that NLP is kind of like applied neurology. You know, I mean, it's just everything that we thought was happening 30 years ago, we now have all the research to show how it happens in the brain. And that's immensely encouraging. The brain is amazingly plastic, is the word that they would use for it, amazingly able to change, amazingly adaptable. So that's an important thing about significant long-term change. Jeffrey Schwartz's book about OCD is one of the long line of research about how easy it is to change something that would have previously been considered an impossible kind of situation. So.
And if we look at that and your time with working with clients, what components do you see needs to be present in order for there to be long-term change in a person? Because sometimes you can have someone go into to therapy or something like that, and they experience that change for maybe a little bit, but then it might come back. But then you have other people that go to the same type of session, but they actually experience that long-term change, and it lasts. What do you see as the difference?
I see the meta level of change rather than the detail as being most important. Right. So I don't think it's the actual ecology of each specific change, you know, whether the person's getting sort of emotional support by having their problem and so on. I mean, that's important, but I don't think it's a big thing. I think the big thing is what beliefs people come in, and especially practitioners, come into the situation with about what change means. Now, it's a very intriguing thing to me to realize that in my years as a psychotherapist, I noticed that psychotherapy teaches people what you need to do is to change so that if you think about things that were horrible that happened to you, then you won't feel bad. So that's how people test. They go and they think about the worst things that happened to them, and they check, can I still feel bad about that? Well, I must still need therapy. And that's just craziness. Like, if you think about horrible things that happened, it's meant to feel bad. It's not meant to feel good. If you think about horrible things that happen and feel good, then something's really broken. So helping people to understand, happy people do not spend a lot of time thinking about bad stuff and feeling happy. They actually have a skill of letting it go and paying attention to how things work. And so getting people to shift in that, it's the kind of basic idea behind positive psychology, I guess, and getting people to understand what change means so that they're not constantly probing a loose tooth with their tongue to see if it will fall out. So showing people that change actually means moving on, focusing on what you want. That's how it works, I think. And culturally, that's different in different places. Again, so it's a wonderful experience to work in so many different cultures. As every year for the last 20 years, I've been working in continents all around the world. And just to give you this example from Japan, the Japanese people that we work with individually have a very different idea about what change is. And they assume that if they get a different model of what to do in their heads, that, okay, that's it, that'll change. And so they don't say, well, what about my wounded inner child? Or, what about releasing the trauma by crying and venting my anger at these people or something? It doesn't even occur to them. So this huge backlog of Freudian psychotherapy in the West is the biggest challenge, I think, to NLP practitioners, getting people to be able to let go and change things.
Do they have other challenges, though, the Japanese, in regards to that, how they process change, that maybe Western people don't have?
Yeah, I think as I said about the the nuclear reactor situation, I think that in some ways they are. This is a matching culture, so it's a culture where people go along with whatever is going on more, and that has enormous risks. I mean, what's happening in Japan is at least as serious as what happened at Chernobyl, and it's not being treated that way here. So there are areas, there's a whole city of Fukushima there sitting inside what would have been the evacuation zone if that was Chernobyl.
Right.
And that's Japanese culture.
That's worrying.
Yeah.
So you can see that wouldn't really happen in maybe like Europe, because they'd maybe strike or just take do their own thing and just get out of there.
Exactly. So we hear of people in hear of people in that disaster area. They're being told by their family, if you leave this area, even if you're pregnant, if you leave this area, you're no longer part of this family, because this family is staying here. This is our home, and this is what we do. So, from one side, that's enormously resilient, and from the other side, it's bloody tragic.
Absolutely. So, if we talk about yourself and your skill development, what do you do regularly to ensure that you stay at the top of your game?
Well, the first thing is that I'm changing time zones a lot. I'm doing quite a lot of training and some individual work as well, and I need a lot of energy. So that's why I have that second hobby, which is Qigong, and that's a thing that gives me kind of movement, energy, focus on my body every day. So, I do a couple of hours of Qigong every day.
Wow.
And that's a bit obsessional, but, I really recommend some kind of attention to your body if you're going to do this kind of thing, because it takes energy to work with people. I train every year. I make sure I'm going to some training. I'm looking forward to attending some of Nick Kemp's training in a couple of weeks, of course. And so I keep up with those kinds of things. And I'm really looking for people who have novel ideas about how to get things to work, quickly.
Who are you impressed by at the moment in regards to the stuff that you want to learn?
Well, honestly, if I had somewhere I was going to go next week, then one that I'm not going to, then one of the people that I would go to is Andy Austin. I love his work on DVDs, and I think there's a lot there. His understanding of how people get to have chronic problems as opposed to getting over them, the kind of thing you've been asking me about. His brilliant development of the NLP movement process, that sort of stuff.
Right.
Someone to watch, I think.
And he's from the UK, which is always a bonus.
Absolutely. Yeah. For those people who are listening to this from there, he's right in your home territory.
Absolutely. So, if you can talk about what people can expect if they train with you, and maybe talk a little bit about the type of training that you're doing in Boulder as well in a few weeks' time, I believe, and also what your future plans are.
Well, Boulder is a unique opportunity. I have had it before, but not so often, to work with some clients in front of people, and people who already have been working with clients themselves and can sort of study what I'm doing at a fairly advanced level, and even critique it. So that's really what's great about that. And if you are working with clients, if you're really interested in how NLP works, then there just aren't many opportunities to get what you get in that kind of situation. And kudos to Steve and Connie Randras for making that happen. So mostly in my trainings, I do private trainings as well as public trainings. You do get I'm a real practical sort of person. You get a good solid research set of techniques. I want to know that you can come out of the training able to do them. I'm not so interested in you thinking I'm amazing as a practitioner so much as thinking that you're amazing as a practitioner. And the other thing is I have a profound interest in the whole picture, which I guess I would call spirituality. So I'm running trainings with my partner Yulia Kurasheva on secular spirituality, and we run that around the world, especially in Thailand. And so in each of my trainings there's some kind of what I would call a spiritual element to it. I think that helping people change is inevitably about love. It's about discovering what it means to be human, and touching the core of everything that you were searching for all your life. So those things are precious to me, and I want to bring them into every training.
Brilliant. Any plans on training, having a training in the UK at all?
You know, a lot of people ask me that because it's a kind of an obvious thing. It's strange to be training in many places in Europe as I do, and not in the homeland of my language. So what it takes, though, is for someone to actually organise it there. I'd love to be doing that.
Absolutely. Well, I've certainly enjoyed it. I would love to have a training with you, and that would be brilliant. But basically, the answers that you've said today have been really good. So I thank you for this interview, and good luck with your training in Boulder in a few weeks.
Thanks very much, and thanks for what you're doing, Aaron, with collecting and all of these thoughts from people. It's a brilliant idea.
I'm really enjoying it. Cool. Well, thanks again, and have a good evening.